Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of The Partial Historians. I am one of your gracious and beautiful hosts, Dr. Greenfield.
So modest too. And I am Dr. Radness. The name says it.
We're currently looking at the history of Rome from the founding of the city.
Yes, it's a unique take, wouldn't you say?
It hasn't been done. No Roman historian has ever tried it before.
No. We're groundbreaking.
You're getting it all here first.
Exactly, yes. So, I believe we left at quite a critical moment.
We left at quite the cliffhanger.
Yeah, because we were looking, in the previous episode, at Tarquinius Priscus.
Lucius Tarquinius Priscus, the man who ends up with an axe in his head.
Yeah, ouch. And he had quite a lengthy rule previous to this incident.
Yeah.
Such a shame.
to encapsulate.
Yes.
So he starts his rule in 616.
Yes.
And the axe in the head moment occurs in 578.
To be precise. Yes.
According to our chronological source, magic.
Which we have talked about before
as
being slightly problematic. But anyway,
we're going to... Just imagine those figures are kind of...
Yeah, we're really running with Livy's version of this for most of it. So
these numbers are not well established. They're kind of largely made up.
Yeah.
But, for the sake of consistency, let's just use those.
They make things fit. Yeah. Okay, so Tarquinius, axe in the head. What are they going to do?
Funny you should ask. The shepherds are sort of like, oh god, they flee the scene.
As you would, yeah.
They're like, oops, our work here is done. Axe in the head, get out of here.
Yeah, luckily, Tanaquil, quick thinking as always. She basically kicks everyone out and says, right, out you go. I need privacy here, people, and I need a first aid kit, pronto.
All of you, leave me with my husband.
Yes, and Servius, you can stay. You can stay.
She orders everybody out. She closes the palace, essentially.
Yeah.
And she summons Servius in.
Yes.
And at this point, this is where things get really interesting from a Roman history perspective and for a role of women perspective.
Yes.
Because according to the narrative that Livy provides, what Tanaquil does at this point is urge Servius to take the kingship.
Absolutely.
There seems to be no question that...
Tarquinius is not quite dead yet, apparently.
Well, it doesn't...
Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, either way.
Nobody's assuming that he's going to survive the axe wound to the head.
No. Wise. They were so wise back then. Where we lost this knowledge,
Yeah, so this is really interesting. So Tanaquil's like, look, all of the things that could possibly stand in your way are things that you shouldn't worry about.
Yes.
Don't worry about being like a foreign king. Don't worry about the fact that you've had these divine portents. They're on your side. This is going to this will smooth things over.
Yep. And
to sort of produce a little bit of leeway time as well, Tanaquil goes out, because apparently the palace has this window that overlooks the Via Nova.
Ah, yes. And she's all like, it's all good. He's totally fine.
She's kicked everybody out of the palace, but they're all just sort of crowded around the window of the palace being like,
waiting.
Come on, like, what's going on?
What happened?
And she's like, it's going to be fine. Tarquinius is okay, guys.
Yeah.
It's okay. He's
Nobody
just recovering.
Panic. Yeah.
And in the meantime, while he's recovering, because, an axe wound is not to be taken lightly, you should listen to Servius.
Yes, Servius. He is so wise.
He's just going to be acting king.
Yeah.
While
hope that's cool.
Tarquinius gets better.
Yeah. And so, she manages to string this out. This so reminds me of Agrippina the Younger and Nero. Does it not? A little bit?
I feel like there is moments in this narrative which set up really particular types of Roman women for which you can fit other, later historical women too in a trope-like fashion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because
this
sort of stands out
like, what? Yeah.
Yeah. These moments where you sort of hide the death in order to move around some political pieces.
Yes.
Definitely.
That's how women work.
Is like our outstanding first example for this.
Indeed, yes.
And Servius gets on board. He's like, yep, gets on the king's robes, grabs some lictors and like, you dudes, get in front of me so everybody knows I'm king.
Yeah. And I mean, he according to Livy as well, there's a bit of a personal motive here, obviously, in that he does have a relationship, obviously, with Tarquinius that goes beyond the political, in that, he's married into the family.
He is married into the family.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So she sort of urges it on that behalf as well. Like, dude, Avenge your father-in-law.
Now's the time.
Yes, exactly. And protect my status. Thank you
and
very much.
And presumably Servius has been prepped a little bit. You don't just take on a role like this and be like, yes, mother-in-law.
Yeah, well, we did talk a bit last time about how once they decided we're going to raise this dude with the fiery head as our son, presumably that entailed educating him and encouraging the natural kingliness of his nature to blossom.
That is provide the right kingly conditions.
Indeed. Into full Rex Factor.
Yes. I see what you did there.
Yes.
Nice.
Anywho, yeah, so he goes around doing this business for a certain amount of time.
Oh yeah, like he does all of the things that symbolically represent kinship in Rome at this point in time. He sits on the chair, the special chair, and he renders judgments.
Indeed.
And he claims at all times that he's consulting the king for his decisions.
I'm sorry. I'm just imagining him like going, "What do you think?"
We just be like leaning back to the curtain. Tarquinius.
If you agree with me, bang twice.
Exactly. But there is a sort of a point at which that you can no longer sustain this sort of charade.
Yeah, because he's basically just doing this on the basis of his, just like the strength of his personality.
Yeah, he's
and
charismatic.
Yeah, like no one's actually said, okay, you can do that. Exactly. No one's just opposing him at this point of time.
Yeah, well, even the people in the background, so the sons of Ancus, who'd sort of set all of this disaster in motion, who could have maybe stepped forward and been like, now's our time.
Yeah, pardon me, but we organised the murder. I think we should reap the rewards.
Yeah, they've gone, I think we need to lay low for a while. This hasn't worked out quite as we planned. Yeah. So they've fled.
Yeah, because, not surprisingly, the shepherds were arrested for their dastardly deed.
Yeah, and it seems that Servius has done some controversial things in this interim period where it's not clear whether Tarquinius is dead or alive, but people are becoming increasingly suspicious because there's some sort of smell, where he's increased his guard.
I know that when my son got an axe through the head, he died instantly. What's going on?
Why are we keeping the meat? We're not really... Why haven't we just eaten the meat? Those sorts of questions.
Yes.
So the trouble is for Servius that he's ruling without the authorization of the people and without the consent of the Senate. So this is
becoming a bit problematic.
A little bit problematic, yes. And so we have to sort of see how it's all going to play out, I suppose.
And basically, kind of like with Tarquinius Priscus, we're in this situation again where there is going to be no interregnum. Servius, although everyone agrees pretty much, apparently, according to the sources, that Servius is a pretty awesome dude all around, he is technically a usurper.
Yes. Yes. He moves to secure his position.
Yeah.
He does some things.
Yeah.
Some important things. He marries
Please enumerate.
He marries his daughters to Tarquinius' sons.
Yeah.
So hold up, there are some natural folk who could be in line here.
Exactly, yeah, and luckily he had a pair of daughters, Tarquinius had a pair of sons.
It's very convenient. Yes, and of course you want to avoid the old Ancus' sons coming after you kind of thing that has happened in the previous generation.
He seems to have learnt his lesson, kind of. Maybe not, but we'll see.
And the trouble is that Livy describes it as there's an atmosphere of treachery and hostility that sees to pervade Servius' household.
That doesn't sound like a nice environment to live in.
Well, the best way to deal with that sort of situation...
Wait. War.
Yeah. You're sort of like, guys, don't hate me. Hate those people over there.
Exactly. Let's stick together. We need to stick together. There's no sense in hating each other when there are all these people like Etruscans out there who are bastards.
It's going to be really important that we kill everybody from Veii.
Yeah, exactly. So let's just put this whole unpleasantness on hold. Promise we'll deal with it later, totes. But for now... Etruscans and they.
Yeah. Look, the war does Servius the world of good because he's proven to be quite the tactician. Again, this is one of those scenarios where we don't get a lot of the details of the battles.
Yeah.
But he seems to have won quite easily, and that's the whole point.
Yeah, triumph over vast hordes, apparently.
No, but you
vast.
You don't need details when you've just won really quickly.
Yeah. And he finds that when this is all over, apparently, he just rocks up to Rome and everyone's like, okay.
Yeah, the hostility has really died down, which makes you think he's done some pretty super awesome stuff in the battles.
Yeah, and it doesn't matter whether he's talking to the Commons or the Senate, they're all good.
Yeah, and they're either like quivering in fear or generally quite impressed.
Yeah, they're loving a bit of that Servius Tullius. Servus, please, Tullius.
Servius Tullius. So he starts his reign in 578 under controversial circumstances.
Yeah, and I mean, it's never, his whole background is never really resolved. I mean, we never really know where he comes from with this whole slave thing that we talked about.
Yeah, because there's speculation that he comes from a slave family.
Yeah.
And Livy has an interpretation where he's like, clearly he's not from a slave family because he has a kingly disposition. So this means that he must come from a royal family that were captured, but they're not really slaves. They're just sort of being held nicely in the royal household of Tanaquil and Tarquinius.
This to me smacks of Romans being embarrassed.
Very embarrassed.
that there was a slave who became king. And... it's not just, I suppose, the embarrassment of having to say to all the people around them, yeah, we might have had a slave as a king. It's also, I mean, as you will see, and as you may have seen from previous episodes, Rome is, like many societies, highly stratified, and showing that there can be social mobility of this kind of magnitude. This is a huge arc, to go from slave to king in one swift maneuver. You don't want to encourage that.
Well, it's creating the sort of setup that will lead to anarchy.
Yeah, exactly. You want to smack that out.
The rigid social structuring of the society is meant to keep everybody in control.
Yeah.
Particularly the plebs.
Yes.
And the plebs are as close as you can get to the slaves, really, anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
The last thing you want is the plebs to get an upstart idea that maybe they could be king.
Yeah, well, like, if that guy's a slave and he can be king, WTF, people.
Hello, why am I not emperor of the universe?
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. So it's interesting that he has that kind of murky background and rises to such a high point. But
definitely.
Anywho, I have some...
Well, and maybe it's the questions around his own status which lead to him going down the highly bureaucratic path that he does.
Interesting. Yeah.
By introducing the first census.
What?
Everybody likes a census.
Yes, it sounds extremely administrative and excellent.
Look, it's exciting times. You basically have to rock up, give all of your personal details. It's a bit like having to do your tax. Rock up, give all of your personal details, tell them how much you have in capital, and wait to see what class that means that you classify by.
Yeah, because basically the census, I mean, you don't count people like just anyone. You don't count like women and stuff. That would be ridiculous.
Women don't actually count.
No. This is all about counting the adult male citizens, the important people.
Oh, yes. Over a certain age. Men of a certain age are counted in the census.
Exactly. And basically, depending on what rolls out, you organise them into a tribe, you organise them into a class, and this has to do with, obviously their property, as you said, and of course also will later have, political and financial implications about tax and voting and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yeah. And becomes it becomes a really interesting way of controlling the class stratification.
Absolutely.
Because at this point in time, it seems to be a little bit more freeform, and this will be systematic. You must come, we will put you into a class based on certain criteria.
Yeah.
And this actually prompts or is part of the factor that leads to a complete reorganisation of the armed forces as well.
Yes.
Because your class that's dictated to you in the census also becomes the class in which you have to provide a certain amount of equipment.
Apparently.
Yes.
Yeah.
In order to engage in warfare.
Yeah.
And there's an expectation.
Like armor and stuff.
Yes. Oh, look, I'm going into the details. Wait for it.
Sorry.
Wait for it. Oh, I've got some details.
You mean and stuff wasn't enough detail?
Oh no. I got excited when I was getting into this.
Okay, please hit me with it, because I somewhat trailed off when I got to the shields, I think.
Oh no, this becomes really interesting.
Yeah.
So the first class.
Yeah.
Top dogs.
Yeah, sorry. Sorry. Just hit my hand. Never mind.
Be shocked. Appropriate response to what you're about to hear.
Okay, I'm good.
The first class has capital equivalent to 100,000 asses.
Ooh.
I'm not even going to bother
I see you, baby. Shaking that ass.
Yeah. Or 100,000 of them.
You know what? I actually think I remember reading, and this could be totally wrong, but I'm just going to throw it out there, that 1 ass is a pound of bronze.
Oh, look, I'm not even going to speculate on how you might divide this up. Like,
it's money. It's a lot of money.
It's a lot. It's a lot. It's the highest amount you can have.
Yeah.
So these people who have this particular amount of capital,
right,
divided into 80 centuries,
right, but not presumably 100 people, because that would be too easy.
No. 80 centuries. Yeah. I'm not going to guess on how many are in these particular centuries, because that number also changes.
Yeah.
Now, half of the people in this category are classified as seniors. So, like, people above a certain age, even more. And some are classified as juniors.
Juniores.
Yeah. So you've got a 50-50 split between, like, old rich guys and adult but quite young rich guys.
Virile. Strong.
Yes.
Manly.
Yeah.
Warlike.
Yes. So.
Sorry.
Where did I...
Adjective.
Insert appropriate adjective. Masculinity. Older masculinity. Grey hair.
Silver fox.
Yeah. Alright.
George Tullius.
So half of these guys, the senior ones of this first class, they're entailed with the defense of the city.
Right.
In times of trouble, you guys will defend the city.
Right. And let me guess, the young ones.
Young ones.
They go out on
They get to go out to war.
Yes, that makes
These
sense.
men have to equip themselves with a vast array of armour and so forth.
Wait, let me guess. Greaves.
They've got to have greaves, yes. Okay. That's one of them.
Good. Shield.
What type of shield?
Escutcheon? No. The other one.
Man, I've just got round shield. I didn't write down the
I think it's the other one, but
the other shield.
Yeah, the other shield. Yeah. No, I think escutcheon might be like the long one, like the oblong typey one. But anyway, round shield sounds good.
Round shield. I'm not even going to guess. I didn't look up the Latin for this.
Okay, some sort of weapon, like a sword.
Yes.
Okay. And armour?
Alright, I'm going to stop you right there. You got 3 of the possible 6, maybe? Okay, so
50%
greaves.
Please get degrees, baby.
Yeah. Greaves, round shield, sword,
right,
spear.
Damn it, of course.
Helmet.
Yep, that's important.
Breastplate.
That's all my armour.
All of which, breastplate is a specific piece of armour.
Okay. Yeah.
All of these things, the helmet, the shield, the greaves, and the breastplate have to be made of bronze.
Right. Good.
Very important.
Okay.
And
that sounds expensive.
Yeah, and there are an additional 2 centuries included in the first class of guys that don't have to have so much going on in terms of, like, the armour.
Yeah.
They're known as mechanics. They serve without arms. I've put in brackets, ha, ha, ha.
And luckily they have legs.
Luckily they've got those other guys around them with lots of arms. And they're required to produce siege engines.
Right.
So presumably these 2 centuries would mostly stay in the city.
Gotcha. Yes.
So that's the first class.
Good.
80 centuries, first class.
Yeah. Actually, just on a side note, I think I remember reading somewhere that when Servius Tullius, as you might expect, he isn't exactly like a pro-aristocracy type king, right? Given his, background and whatnot. As in patricians, I suppose.
I feel like it's hazy territory because the argument for Servius being against the aristocracy comes from a rival claimant to the kingship.
Yeah, I know, but he's not exactly... His actions... And this is where I'm coming from. When he is redistributing people and doing all this, like, military, tribey, census-y stuff, I have heard it suggested that, although we don't really have a lot of evidence, obviously, to back this up, that perhaps he was trying to sort of spread power out so that it wasn't too clannish. Like, particular people didn't have strongholds in the military where, like, they were all together and, could... Hatch an evil plan!
Because this is a redistribution based on wealth.
Yes.
And so
obviously, people have power.
Yeah.
But
people have power.
Wise,
yes, but this is dividing people up in a very different way to the way they've been divided before.
Yes.
And it spreads out a lot of the presumably what might be the clannish nature.
Yes. Anywho, just a side.
No, it's interesting. I think you might be right there.
Yeah, cool.
It sounds highly plausible to me.
Awesome. Continue.
Second class. Those with capital equivalent to between 75,000 and 100,000 asses.
I like big butts and I cannot lie. You other brothers can do... Okay, sorry.
Of these, there are only 20 centuries.
Okay.
Again, made up of equal seniors and juniors.
Gotcha.
These men fit themselves out with an oblong shield.
Ah, okay, maybe that's where I was coming from.
That's it. Okay. So you can distinguish them immediately from the first class.
Gotcha.
Different type of shield.
Gotcha.
They've got the helmet, they've got the greaves.
Ah.
They lack the breastplate.
Well, that seems pretty stupid.
Lucky you got a giant rectangular shield instead.
Ah, yes.
And they have the spear and the sword.
Right, yeah. That's pretty crucial.
Yes. The
Given
third
the type
class.
of warfare, yes.
Third class.
Yeah.
Those with capital equivalent to 50,000 asses.
I don't have another song.
Yeah, right.
I'm sure you're devastated. Yeah.
I'm wounded inside. 20 centuries again.
Yep.
Seniors and juniors.
Cool.
Oblong shield.
Alright.
Spear and sword.
Okay.
Life's getting tough.
Right, yeah.
Just run in there with your shield.
Really scraping the
hope
bottom
for the
of the barrel,
best.
these
You
guys.
really just got to attack, guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Fourth class.
Right.
Capital equivalent to 25,000 asses.
I wish I had another song.
20 centuries.
Okay, yeah.
Equivalent spear and a javelin.
Yeah.
Ain't got a lot going on there.
Spear and a javelin.
Yes. Spear and javelin. Yes. No. I can't believe I went here and broke this song. Breaking my
That's
own
not even a
rules.
song. I hate to put it out to you.
I've still got some way to go.
Yeah, okay.
Fifth class. Capital equivalent to 11,000 asses. 30 centuries. Men with slings. Included.
But you know what? I laugh, but haven't we actually found, I mean, obviously not from this period, but there have been found the little rocks and stuff that they would, not little, but the rocks and stuff that they would sling at people. Right?
Oh, have we? How exciting.
Have we? I feel like we have.
I feel like they have to collect their own rocks. That's part of the deal.
Well, no, I know, but like sometimes they would write insults on them when they were slinging at people.
Yes.
I'm specifically thinking, just going to play all my cards on the table, when they was fighting with Antony and whatnot, hundreds of years in the future. Around the time that so we're like at the end of the Republic, guys. So it's like way we're not even in the Republic yet, we're in the regal period. But weren't there insults about Antony's wife found on some of these rocks? Am I wrong? No? Am I wrong?
I don't know. I'm not sure, so I'm going to say yes.
I feel like I'm not wrong.
Yeah.
So I'm going to say that sometimes we find them.
Sometimes we find insulting rocks.
Yes. Cling.
This is the stuff that the fifth class is all about.
Right. Well, I
insulting rocks.
I like it. There should be more insulting rocks.
Look, they carry slings.
Yeah.
There's also, within these 30 centuries, there's 2 centuries of hornblowers and trumpeters.
That sounds ridiculous, but they are important.
They are very important.
Yeah.
I'm surprised they're low down on the list.
Yeah, but let's face it, if you're in a big battle...
This probably doesn't earn a lot of money as a trumpeter.
No, yeah. Well, and, what are you going to defend yourself with? Take that! Chopin!
Wait for it, let me blow at you.
Exactly. Liszt, Mozart, wah wah! But yeah, they didn't even write for that kind of instrument, so I don't know why I'm saying that. But anyway, when you're in a big battle, you need these people to,
They organise stuff.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
They're very important. Loud.
And obnoxious sounds.
And then we get to the 6th class.
Oh, this can't be good.
Capital equivalent to less than 11,000 asses. So, whoever is left.
90,000 less than everyone else.
A single century.
Yeah.
Number unquantifiable, because it includes everybody that's left.
Yeah.
These people are actually exempt from military service. Such is the devastation of their destituteness. They can't even afford a sling, for goodness sake.
On the upside, though, you don't have to fight.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd mind.
Word. So what is interesting here is that we've got... So the first class has 80 centuries.
Right.
And then the second, third, and fourth class are made of 20 each.
Yeah.
So the second, third, and fourth class do not even equal in number in terms of division into centuries.
True.
The first class.
Yeah.
Then you get to the fifth class, which is made up of 30 centuries.
Yeah.
So they flesh out, 20 of those centuries flesh out an equivalence of the first class when you include them with the second, third, and fourth. And then you've got 11, the 10 remaining of the fifth class, and the final sixth class, 11 remaining centuries at the very bottom.
You're bamboozling me with numbers, which woman?
Yeah, I know. Well, what I'm trying to get at is that this is the moment where we start to have proportional voting take place.
Okay,
in Rome.
now I'm on board. Yeah, okay, cool.
So the number of centuries is important.
Yes.
Because they vote by a class.
Yes.
And then the votes are counted within each century.
Yeah, and they go from the top.
They go from the top. The first class rocks up and they've got 80 centuries, and those 80 centuries vote on the issue.
Yeah.
And if they don't agree, that's when you call up the second class.
Right.
And they get to vote on the issue.
So basically, if you're in the bottom, you have no chance.
The bottom class never, hardly ever,
so
never votes.
Yeah, it's really consolidating power
at
with
the
those
top.
Who rightly should rule, the wealthy.
The ones with all the money.
Yes. Okay,
Yes.
no, I totally see where you're going with that. And also, these people obviously, they're wealthy, they vote first, therefore they're also powerful. Well, and
this is not a recipe
power.
for corruption at all, guys.
Yeah, so I mean, if I were someone in that very bottom group, I might take my lead from the person who is above me.
It's going to be very important.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. I get where you're going. Okay, cool. Wow, that was quite a digression we just had then.
But a very important one, because this sets up the power dynamic that is going to flow through into the Republic when we get to it.
Yes. Okay, cool. Yeah, and Servius, we should probably point out, as you may or may not have guessed, depending on how bright you are. No. He is seen as being a bit of a turning point king because of these apparent types of reorganizations. Ooh, yeah.
How controversial.
Indeed. Yeah. And I'm just going to throw out there, because you gave all that detail, that apparently unmarried women had to pay for the maintenance of horses. I'm finding that baffling. I had a note there going, really? An unmarried woman was assigned to take care of the horse at a cost of 2,000 asses each per year. I'm like, well, she won't have the money, so her family must be fronting that up. Yeah. And then I was like, my note is, admittedly, the translation seems unclear. Yeah. Are the women paying or being paid for? Exactly. It's very weird, but I thought it was an odd detail. Yeah.
I feel like checking the Latin is going to be important to clarify that point.
Yes.
Because I'm not entirely satisfied with the idea of unmarried women without any money having to pay for the upkeep of horses.
It does seem weird, yeah.
Yes.
But basically, as Livy says, so many burdens were shifted from the shoulders of the poor to those of the rich. Manhood suffrage, implying equality of power and of rights, was no longer given promiscuously to all, ridiculous, as had been handed down by Romulus and observed by all other kings. So yes, we really do have this this system happening now.
Oh yeah. And so we get this situation where the census is created, essentially.
Yep.
The census is considered to be...
Sorry, yes.
No,
you
go.
Sorry,
No.
I'm just totally butting in. I was going to say, the impressive thing to me about the census is that it is, as someone I read pointed out, allowing for the sort of flexible nature of Rome itself, in that, you know, it's on the rise, it expands. We've talked about this sudden influxes of population that
you have to organise them somehow.
Yeah, exactly. And so if you carry out reasonably regular censuses, so let's say...
Censi?
No. Let's say approximately every 5 years is apparently when they're supposed to go down. You can obviously keep the population, you know, you can keep reorganising it and keep reclassifying it. So it's allowing for changes, is what I'm trying to say.
Yes. It's adaptable.
Yes.
It's flexible.
I like it.
Yes.
Mwah!
It allows for expansion.
Indeed, it does.
Good.
Sorry, continue with what you were going to say.
Yeah. So Servius calls all the citizens after this first census is complete to the Campus Martius.
Yes.
Organised in their centuries.
Yep.
And then there is a sacrifice.
Let me guess. Okay, I'm going to guess the animals. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
A pig.
Mm-hmm.
A sheep.
Mm-hmm.
And a bull.
Yes.
Names.
Yes. For purification.
3 for 3.
Yeah. Very nice. Strike rate 100%.
Yeah.
So this sacrifice becomes known as the closing of the lustrum. And this
sounds lustrous.
Wow.
Illustrious.
Indeed.
Yes. Anyway.
This is like the symbolic closing that the census is now done.
Yep.
And is seen as the final point of enrolment of the census.
Right, yeah.
At this point in time,
yes,
Livy refers to one of our more fragmentary sources,
right?
Fabius Pictor,
yes,
who has recorded that there were 80,000 citizens who were classified and counted in this first census.
Jesus.
Yeah.
Because that's just the men.
That's just the dudes.
Yeah.
Of appropriate age.
Yeah, that's not like women, slaves, children.
No, horses.
Yeah.
Seems to be. There's a huge provision
Why not
for
count
new
the
horses
yeah.
now.
God knows they have a greater involvement in warfare than women do.
Well, importantly, this means that like Servius gets on board with the expansion of the city itself.
Yeah.
He opens up a couple of the new hills.
Ah, yes. So the Quirinal and the Viminal. Mm-hmm. And also some expansion on the Esquiline, apparently.
As you do.
Yeah.
As you do.
And like, I think I've said this before, because I believe other kings did this.
Yes.
He decides he's going to live on the Esquiline because he wants to, bring the area up a little bit in standing.
Guys, I'm living in the slum. Join me.
Exactly. Gentrification.
Yeah.
It happened even in the ancient world.
Yeah, I think this is the second example we've come across of a king going
God
forward.
God knows, I can't remember who it was. Was it Ancus?
I think it was Ancus, yes.
I think it was Ancus, yeah.
And so Servius goes and moves on to the Esquiline to build and enhance the reputation of this hill.
One can only assume it worked.
Yeah, and then he gets into his like building works programs.
Yes, building must always build.
Yeah. So he, so there's an expanded because they've expanded the city.
Yep.
Tarquinius's wall is no longer
small.
Doesn't really count. You know, it's a bit, like there's things outside the wall now.
Room to put on weight. I can sympathise.
So Servius is like, look, we need to expand the wall.
Yeah.
And it's at this point that the idea of the pomerium comes into play as well.
Yes, the sacred boundary.
The idea that the wall of the city also represents the sacred boundary of the city as well. The circle of protection around the city of Rome.
Yeah, and I think we have talked about this. Okay, it's going to be a bit weird. We talked about this before when we were talking about an emperor like Trajan, I think, for example. Yes. But don't worry about that. We'll come back to that. Or can't go forward to that. One of those.
Yes.
Yeah. Anywho. Irrelevant tangent done.
Yeah, so this idea of the pomerium comes into play. And the idea is that there is space clear slightly in front of the wall and space clear slightly behind the wall, which is the sacred space itself. So the wall is part of it, but there's also this surrounding little area.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like to think of the sound that is made when you run a wet finger around the rim of a wine.
And if we had a glass, I would do that.
Yeah.
we could start to add those sort of sound effects in.
Yeah, okay.
He also decides that it would be a good idea to build a temple.
Of course it is.
Yeah.
God. Hello.
And it turns out that the one that he's particularly enamored with is the temple of Ephesian Artemis. And
why not?
Well, apparently she's quite famous in this period, even as far as Rome, which I'm so happy to hear because Ephesian Artemis is amazing.
Yeah.
She's the many-breasted goddess. Wow.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay, right.
I'm still a little bit of a quibble about whether they're breasts because to me they're kind of like mangoes.
Well, why would she have mangoes on her chest though?
Wow.
Yeah.
But why do her breasts look like mangoes?
I can kind of see it. It's not a bad shape.
So anyway,
yeah.
Side issue.
Yeah.
So he's interested in building a temple to Diana, which is the Latin equivalent for
Dirty
Artemis.
Diana.
No.
Yeah, a shrine to Diana. Gotcha.
Yes, a shrine to Diana.
Yeah.
That he's interested in, and so he's trying to cultivate the nobles, get them on board for this because he doesn't want to do the project all by himself.
Yep.
And eventually it comes together and it's like a shared project.
Right.
Between the Latins and the Romans and the Sabines, and they all there still seems to be, despite the fact that the Sabines and the Latins have been
living together for a while. Yeah.
Well, and have been quelled on a number of occasions.
Yeah.
There still seems to be outposts of culture and population.
Sure.
And so there seems to be okay, let's join together and build this shrine to Diana. That would be nice.
I see, yes.
And
goodwill.
Yeah. And part of the idea that comes into play is that this shrine reinforces the fact that Rome is the capital of the area. Yeah. So it's got this sort of diplomatic aspect about it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, there's also a prophecy.
Oh dear. This doesn't sound good.
Well, there is a story that related to a cow.
Okay.
Yeah, related to a cow.
I'm following you.
A cow of great beauty
All right.
Yes.
You still have me.
And if this cow were to be sacrificed at the shrine of Diana, whoever were to participate, whoever conducted that sacrifice, would actually be the true peoples who are the capital of the area.
Right.
So, like,
okay.
there's... Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's like this weird... so there seems to be this undercurrent of speculation against Rome.
I see. Yeah, it's not a sure thing. Yeah.
Yeah,
I see.
Yeah. So if the magic beautiful cow is sacrificed at the shrine by somebody who is not a Roman, it turns out that the person who does it, who's not a Roman, their people are really the people of the capital. Like, they are really the true destined leaders of the area.
Fair enough.
So this sounds like it sounds funny, but wait. A magic beautiful cow is born.
Yeah.
In Sabine territory.
Oh, of course it is.
Yeah. Surprise.
Oh dear.
So the Sabines, being as they are, take the cow, lead the cow to the temple.
No, I don't want to hear.
I know, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
They lead the cow there. The Romans are on duty at the temple at the time.
Right.
So there seems to be like a share arrangement with like who's looking after the temple on like what schedule, depending on where you come from, because it's this shared project between the Latins and the Sabines and the Romans. Yeah. And so the Romans are there at the time, and they're like, well, it's our turn to look after the temple, and they're like, wait a minute, that looks like the cow.
That cow's very attractive. That cow is Scarlett Johansson in disguise.
I don't think I've seen a better looking cow in all my days. That must be the cow of prophecy.
Hand it over.
Well, even more subtle than that.
Yeah.
They see the Sabine approach with this beautiful cow, and they're like, the reputation of this cow far exceeds anything else, and they're like, that's definitely the most beautiful cow I've ever seen.
Look at those big eyes.
I reckon that's the cow that we've been waiting for. And they look at the Sabine dude, and he's gonna go through the ritual process for the sacrifice, and they're like, blasphemy! Are you gonna sacrifice this cow while you're in a polluted state yourself? Go wash in the river.
Oh, that's so clever.
And the Sabine being like, well, I really want us to be the leaders of the area, so I guess
I better wash.
I don't want to ruin the sacrifice by doing it in a polluted state, so I think I will go down to the river.
Thank Roman guards. I'll go and clean myself.
That is good advice. I will be right back.
Yeah. Do you mind holding on to the cow?
Yeah, I'll leave the cow here and I'll be right back.
Don't kill it.
Funny you should say that. Turns out as soon as the Sabine's down by the river, the Romans are like, now is our chance. Let us sacrifice the cow.
Oh, so sad.
Well, this story really has very little to do with
the cow. I know.
With Servius.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Oh well, I mean, it has a lot to do with the cow. I think the cow was a highly valued
my sympathy for the cow is somewhat irrelevant.
Yeah. Well, and also but this is one of these stories that sort of emphasizes the lack of solidity, if you like, in leadership in the area, and the sort of the tensions that continue to exist.
Yeah.
Despite, I mean, the amount of warfare that's going on. Yeah. This is not a stable thing.
And it's not just that, it's also on a personal level, because apparently, even though he's married to one of Servius's own daughters, one of the sons of Tarquinius, the young Tarquinius, as he shall henceforth be known, he's occasionally going about making comments about, I don't know, usurpers like Servius not having been voted into power, etc. And he also starts to try and sort of whip up a bit of support for himself amongst the commons, does he not?
Yeah, so we get... it's interesting because this young Tarquinius is married to one of Servius's daughters.
Yeah, so there's a connection there.
There is a connection
there. You would
there.
think there's just patience, son.
Yes.
Yeah. But no.
But he's going around and he's sort of hinting that, Servius doesn't really have it going on, and Servius might have a thing for the poor people because he's rearranged everybody in the census, so the rich people have to do all the spending now. Cough, cough, logical argument.
Yeah. And so he apparently divides amongst citizens the land that he had obtained from the enemy.
Yeah.
And saying, come on guys, now who should be your ruler? biatch.
Yeah, so the land that Servius gains through combat, he divides amongst the citizenry in equal portion.
Yeah.
But when we're talking about the citizenry here, we're talking about that last class. So
not everyone.
Not everyone.
People. 80,000 people. Take it.
Yeah. Here you go. Here's your slice.
Yeah.
5 centimeters of land. It's very exciting.
This blade of grass.
Yeah.
Which is yours.
Wow. He's dividing it amongst the lowest class.
Right. Yeah.
So he's basically raising the plebs out of a certain portion of their destitution by providing them land for which they could farm.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
This is part of the deal.
Yeah.
And then we have this young Tarquinius who's sort of questioning this, and he's like, look, this guy hasn't been confirmed by the people.
Yeah.
This is a huge problem. And Servius is like, well, two can play at that game. Let's have a vote by the people.
Yeah.
And the people get there and they're like, that dude just gave me some land. I am down with that. Not that it even matters, because it doesn't get to them.
No.
All of the upper classes vote first.
Yeah.
And
they're all on with Servius.
Yeah, look. Yeah, it's unanimous. So basically what this means is the first class says, we endorse Servius as king. It's fine.
Servius has my vote. For king.
Yeah. Yeah. But wait. Young Tarquinius is not done yet.
No.
I've labelled this section more significant challenge from Tarquinius.
Of course it is.
Yeah. So there's the two brothers. There's Lucius Tarquinius and Arons Tarquinius.
Yes.
Both of whom are married to a Tullia.
Yes.
Daughter of Servius. Tullia 1 and Tullia 2.
It's going to sound, I think, a little bit like a situation comedy.
This is going to sound a little bit like The Bold and the Beautiful for about 5 minutes or so,
because,
I suspect.
as luck would have it, one of the brothers is this hothead, and the other one is apparently, so calm and gentle. And as luck would have it, the daughters are much the same, but they're crazily married to the people who have the opposite personality.
The hot-headed daughter's married to the calm son.
Exactly, yeah.
Yes. And so there's Livy describes this as like a potential saving of the whole situation, because it kept the hotheads, the girl and the boy hothead, apart from each other for long enough for stable rule to take place.
Sure, yeah. But, it still sets things up for craziness and hilarity and tragedy.
Yeah. So, the Tullia, who's quite ambitious and married to the boring son, in her view.
Yes. She gets a little too bored, perhaps.
Well, she gets very bored.
Yeah.
And she actually develops a crush on the brother.
Of course, the hothead brother.
Yeah.
And of course, being a woman, she is the one who's behind all the mischief from the beginning.
Yes, well,
according to our male aristocratic sources.
Yes. Yes. I would take this story with a great deal of suspicion, listeners.
Yes. But anywho.
Not only did she despise her sister for being a milksop, apparently.
Yeah. And her husband, presumably, for being much the same.
Yes, and for having the man that she found more attractive out of the two brothers.
Yes. And so she decides to hatch an evil plan. Wow.
So she first of all engages in an affair.
Sure, yeah.
Well, that's probably to be expected.
Yeah.
And while she does that,
yes.
while she's meeting with the hothead brother,
the planning begins.
Yes, she's like, so Tarquinius, it's like, I reckon you could be king.
Yeah.
She seems.
Wouldn't it be convenient if maybe both our spouses died and I could be like your queen?
Yes. You can be king, I can be queen. All we have to do is kill our respective spouses and then marry each other.
Job done.
What a stellar plan. And this is exactly what they do. This is horrific.
Yeah, and Tullius, of course, has been reigning for quite a while by this point of time, according to our lovely stretched out rulership. And so, they see themselves as young and fresh and,
Yeah, bringing something new. And with legitimate grievances about how Servius came into power.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
This seems to be despite the fact that Tullia is the daughter of Servius.
Yes.
That doesn't seem to play at all
into
the way that she behaves in
What?
any of
My
this.
dad?
My dad.
Man.
Forget him.
Yeah.
I'm not interested in him.
No.
I'm interested in us and the future, Tarquinius.
She gives this amazing speech, according to Lizzie, where she eggs him on massively.
Look, it's kind of horrific. It's that sort of thing where it's like, are you courageous or are you not courageous? It's really...
Art thou a man?
Yeah.
Art those testicles between thy thighs?
It's horrific. It really is. It's the sort of thing that does nobody justice.
No. I like the way Livy pans this off inspired by this woman's frenzy, Tarquinius goes about and starts saying, hey, would you back me?
Yeah, so, I mean, they do get married, despite the murders. This is permitted. Servius isn't particularly happy about it, but he's sort of like, oh, what if that's what you guys are going to do?
Yeah, I mean, it seems a little
so
odd.
be it.
Yeah,
it's like,
okay.
All right, guys.
You find that appealing?
So, once the marriage between Tullia and Tarquinius takes place, Servius's position is increasingly endangered.
Yes.
Tullia is really active and ambitious.
Yep. She really pushing Tarquinius.
She really wants to be queen.
Yeah.
She seems to have this jealous rivalry against Tanaquil.
Ew.
Because because historically Tanaquil has made 2 kings.
Yes.
And
the
Tullia,
kingmaker.
and Tullia so far has made none.
Yes.
And in fact, she doesn't even have a king yet. And
no, she's not even married to one.
She's like, come on, husband, like, get with the program.
Yeah.
We've
killed these people. We're married now.
We've killed these people. I've married you. Why aren't you king yet?
Yeah.
Like, wasn't that the plan?
Yeah. So he goes, okay, sure.
All right, sweetheart. Calm yourself. Calm yourself.
Yeah. So he goes about amongst, at first, the lesser families. I'm using my flesh rabbits.
Well, these are the families that Tarquinius Priscus, his father, brought into the Senate. So these are the natural allies for Tarquinius the Younger.
Exactly. And he's like, dudes, remember my father's kindness?
Like, now making you a part of the Senate.
Yeah. Now it's time for you to repay this favour. And he bribes them with gifts. And also promises, as you might expect.
Promises for the future, and also, like, just madly dissing Servius wherever he goes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Here, have this. And by the way, what a bastard.
What a douche. You've seen that guy? He is totally rotting the rich.
Yeah, and so finally, after somewhat a lengthy process, I imagine, the time comes for him to take action.
Yeah, he bursts into the forum.
Yeah.
Bursts into the forum.
Saloon doors. Swing, 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 swing.
Yeah. He's got some armed people with him, so he's got some hoodlums on board.
Exactly.
And he sort of marches up to the Curia, the Senate house, as you do.
The seat, that is, yeah.
And sits on the chair.
Yeah, he's like, ha-ha.
How about that?
Yeah.
And he has a herald. He doesn't do the announcement himself.
No.
He manages to organise one of these trumpeteer dudes.
Yes, he says, Herald, come over here.
Herald, you. Who announces that all the senators should come and assemble and meet King Tarquinius.
What? But the king is Servius. What are you talking about?
No.
Yeah.
King Tarquinius.
Yeah. So it seems that some of the senators, everyone turns up basically, apparently.
Because everyone's probably like, what the...
Yeah. Well, see, this is the thing. Apparently, according to Livy, super reliable as always, some were already prepared. Flesh rabbits are bouncing.
Yes. And I think we have to expect that. I mean, Tarquinius has done a lot of sort of groundwork before this moment. I don't think you just walk in unprepared and be like,
I'm the king.
How about it? King, everybody come to my meeting.
This won't be dangerous at all.
Yeah, if you hadn't laid the proper groundwork, this would just be a flop and you would probably get killed.
Yeah. And so other people come, presumably because they're kind of like, what? Okay, there's obviously been a coup. If I don't go and this all pans out, I could be in the crap.
I better turn up.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Once the Senate assembles, Tarquinius launches into one of his set pieces, which is the criticisms he's been going with all along, where he's like, Servius is a slave,
born of a slave woman.
He seized power after the shameful death of my father, Tarquinius Priscus.
There's been no interregnum.
There was no interregnum. Policy wasn't followed.
Scandalous.
No timely election.
Nope.
Because there was that very late election that Servius had set up. No timely election.
Yeah, people had not been consulted. The senators had not been consulted. In fact, he came to power by the hands of a woman.
Yeah.
A woman!
Perhaps the worst of all.
Oh, disgraceful.
It was Tanaquil. I'm sorry. That doesn't count, does it?
And then he makes this very strange, and this is what you were talking about before, about the whole idea of Servius being not exactly pro-aristocracy, I think. He says that Servius has basically been promoting the interests of the lowest class of society because that's where he has come from himself. Boom!
Yeah. So the reason why the plebs have this great deal now where they've been given slices of land here and there is because Servius is a slave.
What the? Even though it was kind of...
Yeah, like,
what?
he basically... he basically rewrites the narrative of the census restructuring around the way in which the aristocracy is getting a poor deal.
In this poor aristocracy.
The poor aristocracy with their massive voting power and all of their capital.
Yeah.
They are being rorted because what the census allows is for Servius to step in at any time and say, I need some of your money and I know that you've got it because I already just counted it.
Yeah.
So you have to give it to me.
Yeah.
And then to give it to poor people.
Shocking.
Yeah.
Shocking.
It is terrible.
Yeah.
In Tarquinius's view, this is the worst of the worst.
Yeah. And he's, like, burdened the aristocracy with, like, ruling a lot.
Like, with stuff that they, like, now have to pay for stuff where they didn't have to pay for stuff before.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
So Servius...
If you're seeing, like, parallels with the modern world, I mean, please, just go straight ahead with those.
Exactly.
There is some mad corruption things going on here. But it's the argument that seems to win over the Senate. Perhaps understandably, given their class,
exactly,
the way they've been filtered into the census.
Yeah.
Anyway, Servius, meanwhile, has heard rumour of what is going on.
Yeah.
And it's like,
I need to get there. I'm the king. What?
I feel like I should go down to the forum. There might be something happening.
Yeah. So he basically goes there, and Tarquinius is like, ha! I'm sitting in the seat of my father, and I deserve to sit here. You are only a slave. Mwah! Away with you.
Yeah, this seems to break down rather quickly into a physical, like a brawl of sorts.
Unsurprisingly, perhaps. Because obviously there are still people who are in the Senate that are going to support Servius. You know,
yes, there is a percentage of people who are still pro-Servius.
Exactly.
A fight breaks out.
Yeah.
Tarquinius throws Servius out of the Senate house.
And he can't go back now. He may as well just commit himself entirely to this.
Yeah. I like this idea of the physical sort of throwing out of the...
Not just out of the Senate house, but down the steps.
Out.
Yeah.
He's thrown out. When that happens, that seems to break the moment.
Yeah. And then he goes back into the Senate house.
Well, Tarquinius goes back in.
Yeah.
And the pro-Servius faction dissipate. Ooh. They get out of there. And they leave the injured Servius.
Oh, so horrible.
This is like watching a wounded creature.
Yeah.
The injured...
we are, really.
Yes. The injured king.
Yeah.
This way, Servius sort of starts to make his way slowly, half fainting back home.
Yeah.
Doesn't quite make it.
Yeah.
I hate to break it to you, listeners.
This is so sad. Tarquinius basically sends people after him and has him killed.
Yes, easily caught, easily killed.
Yeah. And of course, Livy just likes to point out that this idea probably came from Tullia, the woman.
Course. A man wouldn't come up with an idea like this. Must be a woman.
It's outrageous.
So we have this. Yeah, this. It's interesting because what Tullia's function in this narrative essentially does is absolve Tarquinius of a lot of the horrific things that enable him to come to power.
Yeah.
And
convenient.
Yeah.
No?
And by placing them all on Tullia, it allows
dissipates
enhances his legitimacy in certain ways. Although perhaps emasculating him into the bargain.
It's a fine line. It's a fine line.
It's a small price to pay if he's not really responsible for what goes down.
Exactly, yeah. So she apparently is driving around in her garage in the forum.
As you do.
Not ashamed at all to be out and about at this time. And sees her husband is like, hail, King Tarquinius.
Yeah, and she's apparently the first citizen.
Yeah.
Citizen.
Yeah.
To hail Tarquinius as king.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
And he basically says, go home.
He's like, I'm not done here. Maybe just
go home.
Get out.
Yeah, so she does go home, but she decides to stop by this shrine of Diana, which we were talking about.
As you do.
Yeah. On the way home. And while she's there, her driver says, hey, isn't that the murdered body of your father?
I think that might be the body of the murdered Servius.
Yes. And she says, awesome, drive over it. And like, what? She says, drive over it!
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's really, really bad.
Yeah. Yeah. Carried back some of her father's blood.
On the wheels of her carriage.
On the wheels of her carriage.
So thus ends what had been actually quite a good rule of 44 years, apparently.
But it comes to a very dismal end.
Yeah, and basically, as we've had before, Livy kind of says, well, he was so good, it's kind of hard for people afterwards to measure up. But also, probably what comes next, dun, 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 he's going to set him up to look even more awesome.
Yes, yes. And so, like, Servius does all of this sort of organisation, has this kingly demeanour, successful in battle, and totally done over by his children.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Well, child. Well, I guess,
well,
children, yeah.
Sons-in-laws,
True.
I think they count as children, do they not?
Very true. Totally stabbed in the back.
Indeed.
And so that brings us to the end.
Yeah, so the life of Servius Tullius ends, according to our chronological overview, in 534.
Now, you might be thinking to yourselves, those of you who are well up to date, that's getting very close.
That's getting very close.
To the founding of the Republic, and you would be right.
Yes, we are very close.
We have only one more king to go. Dun, dun, dun.
Yes, indeed.
Please join us next time.
I wonder who it will be.
No idea at this point. King Tullia.
I feel like she's probably earned it.
Yeah, definitely. Alrighty then. See you next time.
Farewell.